Hello, this is Jim Lutz with Quanta, and welcome to Achievers Club, and welcome to this edition of Black Belt Mind Training, where you receive world-class mind training that is applicable to all areas of life, to upping your game, whether that be in business, personal relationships, reprogramming your subconscious, learning to let go, and creating world-class results in all areas of your life. Black Belt Mind Training will bring you strategies, techniques, and methodologies that others pay tens of thousands of dollars for. So let's kick off this edition of Black Belt Mind Training. Today I'm going to talk about something that in my practice throughout life and in this industry, I've merged hypnosis with neuro-linguistic programming. In my opinion, they are the perfect merger. Hypnosis being the amplifier and neuro-linguistics being the rewiring, if you will. In this edition of Black Belt Mind Training, I'm going to teach you a very simple concept called anchoring. Now, anchoring is a fascinating concept, and there's beginning anchoring, there's intermediate anchoring, and advanced anchoring strategies. But I want to just share with you a little bit how anchoring works, and I'm also going to share with you buying concepts that are based on internal representational systems and how a person's behaviors and outcomes are tied to this. So don't be intimidated. We're not going to overwhelm you, but you are learning something new. In Black Belt Mind Training, we're going to bring you strategies and tactics that are a little involved. After all, you want to be the best you can be, so we're going to teach you advanced strategies. And you can absorb the information, learn it at your own speed. It's not a race. You're not in competition with anyone. You're just simply out to be as good as you can be. So let me talk a little bit about how representational systems apply and how people specifically interpret information based on past buying habits. In neurolinguistics, we call it auditory, kinesthetic, and visual as our primary three. Neurolinguistic programming will show people how to access these buying cues. So let me give you a real world example. Say that you're in real estate and you are a real estate agent. Would it not benefit you to know how a person purchased a home in the past successfully, so that you could apply that same state, if you will, that same level of communication, and ultimately that same outcome to the situation? Well, sure it would. Well, people's primary buying modalities are based in either being predominantly visual, predominantly kinesthetic or feeling, or predominantly auditory or hearing. When you establish an awareness of how they have made the same pattern leading to a purchase in the past, then you are able to craft your linguistics, your language, to match how that buying habit occurs. So let me give you an example. Somebody will walk into a house and they will say, I'm here to purchase this house and I'm a real estate agent showing it to them. I want to access their primary buying modality by asking a question. Tell me about the last house you purchased, or tell me about the condominium you last rented. By acquiring this information using active listening, not listening to respond, listening actively to listen and absorb the content that they're giving me, I will listen to the words they use. They may tell me, you know, the last house we owned was in Denver, and it just sounded like a good deal. It just sounded like somewhere I could raise the family. Auditory. Primarily, they are purchasing through an auditory representational system. Another example would be, when I purchased that home in Denver, it just looked like home to me. It just looked like the place of my dreams. Visual predominant representational system in that individual. A third person may come into the same situation and say, you know, it just felt like home. You know, I walked in and I just felt at home immediately. Kinesthetic or feeling representational system. So on these basics of NLP, now you know how that person processes information, either through primary visual, primary kinesthetic, or primary auditory. You can now use that information to craft your presentation or your sales presentation to that individual. If an individual was primarily auditory, meaning that they process through listening, then you may craft your sales presentation pointing out the birds in the background, pointing out the noise of the breeze in the trees, pointing out how the stereo system sounds as it's wired throughout the entire home. You're going to accentuate and display items of the home that align with their primary representational system. If it's somebody that processes and purchases kinesthetically as their primary, that's feeling. You may show how solid the walls are. You may show the beautiful granite countertops. You may show the solid wood floors. You're going to look at things that they can feel. You might show the texture of the carpet, things that they can feel so that you're aligning with their primary representational system, which is kinesthetic or touching or feeling. Now, if it's somebody that is visual, they say, you know, it just looked like the right place. You are taking in those cues of their representational system and then crafting your response to look at the view. Will you look at how big this room is? Will you look at how beautiful this carpet is? Now you're moving them toward amplifying the components of the house to what their primary buying or representational system is. So removing it from real estate for a second, just in persuasion and influence, it is of a great advantage to understand how somebody processes information. So during a conversation, regardless of the outcome, you're able to align with that. So ask questions again. Ask to learn, not to respond. Active listening. And what you'll find is that if you craft your questions to where they have to access what are called knowns, the objective is to get them to turn inward. Same thing that I will use in Ericksonian hypnosis or other advanced hypnotic techniques. I want the human mind to go inward, to seek. When the mind goes inward, it excludes the external stimuli. As the mind goes inward, it now becomes susceptible to suggestion, A, but also is accessing information that you can utilize to further build rapport and a conversational outcome. So ask a question that turns the mind inward. So a question that does not would be something like, do you like this menu? Do you like the color? That would be something that could be answered in a moment right there. Ask them a question using words such as imagine, or go back for a second and tell me about that first date that you had. That would be a situation that they would need to access and recall by going inward into their memory and pulling out valuable information that you can use on how they communicate and how you can establish communication much quicker with that individual by understanding more about them. So ask a question such as, you know, if I were to have you think for a moment about the perfect view from your home, what would that be? They now have to move to a creative mode internally, craft that view, drawing from perhaps a view that they have actually seen, and give you an answer that you can now maneuver around to create a more congruent flow of conversation. Are you tracking with me? Does that make sense? So you're accessing information through active listening so that you can craft an active conversation based on how they communicate and their primary representational systems that they use. Once you become good at this, it will become what's known as a cognitive flow. You will have a tendency to be able to do this with the flip of a switch, active listening. Now, one of the most effective ways that you can practice this is as follows. You know, as you move through life, you're going to be in different situations. You'll be in public situations with a few people, one person, many people. What I've always taught my students is to take an experiential view, just like learning. You know, we become academically groomed that a learning environment is in a school or in a classroom, or at even a seminar. You know, if you want to produce minimal results, study the components. If you want to produce maximum results from a monetary standpoint, from wealth building, from relationships, study people. And that's what Black Belt Mind Training is going to teach you, along with Quantum Leap relationship training. The study of people will give you a huge advantage in every area of your life. So as you move through all of your life circumstances, people move through just completely oblivious to what's going on or what's being said, because we are overstimulated through messaging and private messaging and emails today. I want you to become aware of human interaction and listen as if it's your rolling classroom, as if it is your classroom of the planet, if you will. You are around people, most of you, a lot. They have so much to teach you that you will now take what we're showing you on the Achievers Club, and you will apply it and learn from that experience. So what happens when you see people move very forward with these, very quickly with these techniques, is they're always watching and listening and learning, watching communication from all aspects. So I want you to, if you're at a restaurant and at the adjacent table, the waiter is communicating with the patron, I want you to listen closely. Listen to their responses. Is it kinesthetic? Is it auditory? Is it visual? Is it gustatory? You know, how are their responses crafted when they're communicating? Then what I want you to do is put yourself in an imaginary state that you're the waiter. How would you respond? You see, you're practicing giving real-world situations, not crafted situations, not plays and not movies. You're in a real-world situation to where you can draw. So anytime I'm out and I overhear a conversation, I'm actively listening to the way that they communicate, because now you become sensory aware. The more you're aware of a person's communications, the more you are in an omnipotent present point of mind or frame of mind, to where you're able now to turn that on, if you will, that radar, and understand when another person communicates. So when you're out, just don't be in a trance. I want you to be out actively using all of these interactions, all of these situations to your advantage, learning to recognize representational systems. Again, auditory, visual, kinesthetic, gustatory, meaning taste. And I want you to be thinking about how others communicate. Then I want you to put yourself in the conversation from an imaginative standpoint, and how would you respond? For those of you that watch television, I don't watch a lot of television, but for those of you that do, I want you to look at not a reality show, because I hate to break this to you, it's not really reality. I don't want you to look at the news. That's for other practice. I want you to look at any time you see a news clip, or excellent, of people that aren't on the news, because now they're changing. A news clip of a real world in the street interview. Something happens and they're interviewing a person right there on the scene. Watch that person's mannerism, A. Be aware of their energetic exchange, B. And then watch their representational systems. You know, this just sounds like it's going to go crazy. You know, this just looks like a very stressful situation to me. Or, you know, all I do is hear. You're now looking at the representational systems and getting conditioned yourself to be a pro at Black Belt Mind Training, to be a pro at neuro-linguistic programming, to be a pro at the different facets of hypnosis and the power of letting go, and all of these that you'll be practicing on an ongoing basis. So now I want you to look inside yourself. I'm now going to show you how to practice on one of the most important people in the world. That's you. So we're going to practice on you before you take it to the streets and practice Black Belt Mind Training out there. You know, on a side note, as we move forward with the Achievers Club and Quanta and Black Belt Mind Training, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go into the streets, and I'm going to mic myself up with a camera and a microphone, and I'm going to show you how this actually works on real people, real scenarios, unrehearsed. So it's going to be exciting on future modules of Black Belt Mind Training as well. I want to show you real world experience. But right now, what we're going to do is we're going to allow you to go inward to better understand how your own representational systems work. So if I were to say to you, give me something that sounds good to you, I want you to allow it to happen. So I'm going to do it in a moment. But when I make that statement, don't assist it, don't inhibit it, just allow it to flow. And the first thing that comes into your mind from the subconscious is what we're looking for. So watch manipulation, keep your analytical processes over to the side for a moment. So what sounds like a great thing to you? And allow the subconscious to bring something up. Now, you analyticals out there are going to say, well, what do you mean? Food? What do you mean? Music? What do you mean? I don't mean anything. I just mean what sounds really good to you. And think of what comes up. For some of you, music comes up. For some of you, a big plate of Italian food comes up. For some of you, a vacation comes up. That's your internal representation, core memory representation based on the representational system of auditory. It's going to pull that up from your memory. So, you ready? Let's do it again. What sounds really good to you? Let it come up. See where you attach auditory representation to. Doesn't have to be auditory, does it? Food can sound good. Isn't that something? Food is a gustatory experience and a visual experience, yet can sound good. Pretty crazy, huh? Now what we're going to do is I'm going to give you another one. What looks really good to you? Remember, not to inhibit it, not to assist it, not to manipulate it. Just allow it to happen. What looks really good to you? And allow it to float up. For some of you, it may be somebody of the opposite sex. For some of you, it may be a vacation again. For some of you, it may be a new computer. Whatever flows up shows you an accurate example of how you process visual representational systems internally as you go inside. Okay? Let's do another one. This is a fun one. What feels really good to you? Okay? Just allow whatever comes up. Some of you, it will be one thing. Some of you, it'll be another thing. But what feels really good to you? Now, when you use kinesthetic or feeling, oftentimes you have a more kinesthetic thing that comes up. So you'll have a massage, or you'll have kissing, or you'll have relaxing on the beach, or you'll have something that has of a more kinesthetic association than thinking that food sounds good. So there'll be a crossover between the representational systems in some areas and more of a congruent specificity in another area when you're looking at it. And so when I say what feels good, what comes up? All right? Now you're going inside and practicing on your own representational systems. Now the next thing I want you to do is I want you to pause for a moment, and I'm going to ask you some questions. When I ask you this question, I want you to ask it in your mind's voice to yourself, and then allow an answer to come. All right? So it's not me asking you the question. It's me just simply telling you what the question is. And then you're going to ask the question of yourself and monitor the response. Okay? So get set. And here we go with the first one. What is the timeline for your happiness? What is the timeline for your happiness? Now, you're going to ask it in the first person. So from this point forward, I'll ask it first person if it helps you out. So you're going to ask the question, what is the timeline for my happiness? So if I were you, I would say, what is the timeline for my happiness? Take a deep breath and relax and let the answer emerge. Deal with what emerges. No manipulation or analytical intervention. Deal with what emerges. What is the timeline for my happiness? And allow it to process. It may take 5 seconds, it may take 5 minutes. Allow it to process. Okay. The reason you're doing this is to practice and condition your unconscious mind to go inside. As we move forward with hypnosis training and neurolinguistic programming training, NLP, power of letting go, psychosomatic parenthetics, and other strategies, They are all predicated on your ability to go inside. And then you move your internal structures to the outside. So let's begin with another question. When I feel excited, I am doing what? Okay, now I'm going to show you how we used a presupposition later, but for now, when I am excited, I feel what? Ask it with a question on the end. When I feel excited, I feel what? And allow it to come up, and then deal with what emerges. There is no right, there is no wrong, there's no analysis. You're simply becoming conditioned for an internally accessed response. You're talking to yourself, but with an outcome, with an agenda. When I feel excited, I am what? And whatever comes up. Okay? Allow it to process, and we'll continue with the third and final question. I wonder what it would be like to look around and see something that I know is awesome. I wonder what it would be like to look around and see something that would be awesome. Ask that of yourself. I wonder what it would be like, in the form of a tonality of question. I wonder what it would be like to look around and see something that would be awesome. Now that's a very advanced internal questioning, because in there are multiple linguistic patterns that will initiate multiple responses from you at the same time. And you will deal with what emerges and what comes up. Very good. The reason you're doing this, again, is to condition your mind. I want you to think about a gymnast that stretches, or a karate guy or girl that stretches. The stretching of the muscles have a tendency to pull back until they're stretched enough times that the level to where they pull back becomes less and less and less. By conditioning the internal representations of your own mind, two very important things happen. You become more accessible to yourself, which is personal development, self-development, right? But you also become more aware of the conversations, the internal representations, and the outcomes that you desire with other people as you're using NLP in situations to make it a win-win and benefit both parties. So start practicing asking yourself questions with a non-specific answer. Okay? Think of questions you can ask yourself. Ask in the first person. Keep conditioning your unconscious with non-specific answers. The reason you use non-specific is your mind must search, your mind must craft, and your mind must access. We're going to see you on the next module of Black Belt Mind Training, with great things to come, not only from Quanta's Black Belt Mind Training and Achievers Club, but also from you, your experience of yourself, the experience of the world, and the outcomes that you desire. Thanks for joining me. I'm Jim Lutz on Black Belt Mind Training.